Peace and blessings, family. How are you all doing? Welcome back to the channel. It's great to have you all with me for another live session. Praises to the Most High Yah for another week, another day. Praises to his name. So, welcome to all of our new and returning listeners. We've been exposing the hidden hand ruling the world leaders. Surely we can see that something is going on with these crazy people. They have to be possessed by something. Spiritual forces are subtly shaping the actions of these world leaders. We can see it in the decisions that they're making day to day. Some of it is just not making any sense, but it's continuing the ancient conflict that transcends our world. But we know that a shift is happening based on Bible prophecy. We know that certain things should be happening when his people start to wake up. And as we wake up, we see something happening with them as well. We see things being uncovered, the hidden influences behind the scene, the evil that's working in the shadows. We see that these things are beginning to be exposed. Their children are exposing the dark secrets. And for those who have eyes to see, it's very clear that demonic entities, wicked entities, are working behind the scenes because some of the decisions that they're making, particularly as it pertains to us, almost every single day, there's something that this administration is doing that will impact our people. But we know these things must happen. We're looking at Pharaoh 2.0. But scripture tells us that it's the ongoing battle between good versus evil. And it also tells us who's going to win this battle, who will win this fight. So, again, thanks for joining me, family. When I say we woke up and they did too, I'm not necessarily saying that they woke up to the truth about who we are. No, they're waking up to the truth about who they are, as in their true history and lineage. And I'm going to share two videos actually tonight. Hopefully, you had a chance to listen to part one. This is going to be part two of the message. Their children are exposing the dark secrets. And I'm going to share two videos about two individuals who went through an awakening. And again, I'm not talking about the same awakening that we're having about who we are. It's their awakening about their true roots, their heritage, I should say. And they're spilling the tea, letting things out there, letting the cat out of the bag per se. But it's fulfilling this prophecy right here from Jeremiah 16:19, where the Most High says that the Gentiles shall come from the ends of the earth, and they're going to say, surely our fathers have inherited lies, vanity, and things wherein there is no profit. I don't know about you, but I can see this prophecy unfolding right before us. And I believe that's why this administration is trying so hard to turn the clock back to an era before the civil rights movement. We're looking at apartheid America. That's exactly what this is. But again, we know who's going to win this fight. Is this not a joke right here? This is a joke right here. We don't believe in erasing American history, says Hegseth, with exceptions, that is. That's what Newsweek is saying. So this says Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has come under fire from historians after announcing A Confederate memorial will be restored to Arlington National Cemetery after it was removed in December 2023. In a post on X, Hegseth said, the Reconciliation Monument, which commemorates the Confederate dead from the Civil War, would be reinstated after its removal by what he termed as woke lemmings. So you're a lemming if you're woke. The secretary added, unlike the left, we don't believe in erasing American history. We honor it. Now, that's a joke. That is surely a joke because they're doing everything in their power to erase American history, unless they're saying your history, as in our history, is not a part of American history. And that more than likely is what he's saying. But we're going to go on. For those of you who tuned in last time, remember that this has everything to do with the bloodline. And if you remember, Loren exposed a lot of it. She talked about these ancient family bloodlines and who they really served. She said they are Luciferians. And the first video, the guy that I'm going to show in the first video, you're going to see that he's going to say that. He's going to admit that that's exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about ancient bloodlines, ancient, and they have been protecting their bloodline while diluting our bloodline. So you'll hear again from these two different people, and then I'm going to share some things, but I want you to see how these two stories have certain things in common. You're going to see that a big part of it is also the interbreeding that we talked about last time to keep their bloodline intact. And they don't care how they do it. There's something serious, or they are very serious about maintaining the purity of this bloodline. So the first video is called The Bloodlines of Monsters, and it's from a channel called the Confessional Channel. I'll leave the links in the description when we're done. But the host is interviewing a guy named Nathan Reynolds. And some of you may have heard of him. Sister Cece actually sent this one to me. But in the video, Nathan shares his disturbing, and it's very disturbing, you all. I only grabbed certain parts from the video, but you can listen to the entire thing. When I say it's disturbing and it's eye-opening. But he's sharing the story about his upbringing. And then the next person will be a lady named Jenny Gage. And the name of her channel is Life Take Two. She was raised in a conservative Mormon family. So let's get started with this. And then, we have some things to talk about.
Some might call them abreactions, mutations, these skills, psychic abilities, that kind of stuff, all variants of it. And so they raise up their children in this path with which involves a tremendous amount of shattering of the soul and the identity so that there's compartmentalization within, and it allows them the ability to train their child up in a way that makes them conducive towards the family. I call them the family. That's what I called them. It's a better word for mafia than anything else. But no, we didn't call ourselves, like my family wouldn't ever call themselves Illuminists.
Yeah.
Right? They're Luciferian. That's for certain. They worship Hillel ben Shahar, as he's really known, but different reasons than what people are ascribed to,
So the programming begins at birth for those born into this bloodline or those born into these cults. He says they can trace their bloodline back to the seed of the fallen. Now, if you remember, that's what Loren said, that these bloodline families are Luciferians, and they are very protective of their bloodline. He says they know that they were worshiping Hillel.
This is also documented in a book called The Gilded Leaf by Patrick Reynolds, who was a bloodline descendant specifically and in the actual inheritance of the Winston cigarette company, the tobacco empire that ended up buying Nabisco Foods, that ended up running the world.
What relation is it to you? Like an uncle?
I don't know that I am a bloodline relative of that guy.
Oh, okay.
Patrick Reynolds specifically. My Reynolds family is the one that does the black gold stuff, all the secret, disgusting, dirty money. They're the white launderers of the money, right? But you got to have your seedy, corrupt group. And that's what my family did. They did all the dirty stuff.
Wow.
And so but in his book, in his firsthand account, they talk about the Joshua coin and them using a coin that was from Judas that he betrayed Yeshua with, and the 30 pieces of silver that was the blood guilt money. They would touch that silver coin to anything they wanted, and it would grow an empire. The cost was always massive bloodshed and a massive demand of life. And that's always what the serpent required. He wanted life. And so like on one side of the equation, that's what they used to build the Reynolds empire. That's what they used to go down Alcoa and all the aluminum industry and all of the stuff they spray on us and the stuff they poison us with and inject us with and all the variables of complexities of targeting that they've done against us. That all comes from that covenant that those two brothers sat down, did, and entered into a blood covenant with the dragon, man. And this is what the fruit of it was. Well, my family entered into that on a different route through this priest class thing. And that's what they would practice down there. And that's the same old religion that people have been using a long time. So on one side of it, I've seen physical beings that are definitely not like our animals up here come out of these spaces from inside the earth. I've seen in deep underground military bases, dogmen, like you would kind of describe them, some more humanized. And I think a lot of those were experimentation and genetic splicing. I think a lot of that was gene editing stuff that I've seen. But I do believe that some of these things are holdovers from the old days. They're the last of their kinds, and they've been breeding them, right? And I believe that that's the stuff that's prophesied that's going to come back out and cause the hearts of men to stop for fear of looking after these things that are coming up on the earth. That's why everywhere I went throughout my youth, I could go to these tunnels and these caves and call out, and I could hear them, and they would call back, and it's like it's a seductive power that draws you back into it.
You could call out to them? Like, was it like a language or a sound or what?
Oh, yeah, man. You can learn to call to them. You can go out here in these hills out here and do it. You can still do it tonight on these full moons and stuff. You can start calling out, and you'll think you'll hear coyotes at first, and then all of a sudden it's a totally different, it's a different sound that starts to resonate, and then it's a different one that calls off from over here, right? You got to understand, some of these guys that you think are just neighbors and stuff or just people, like this is what they keep in their barn.
He said some of them are keeping these strange creatures in their barns. Can you imagine? But this also made me think of the rituals and the Enochian language that Jack Parsons talked about. Let's go on.
Interesting. All right. So I want you to start from the beginning of what your childhood was like and just walk us through this. But before you do, you just said something that I got to ask you before I forget. Are what they believe, do you believe is true in the sense of them being able to trace back their lineage to the fallen?
Some of them, yes. I believe they absolutely can.
Do you think that's in your blood?
I believe it was, yeah. I believe it is.
Yeah?
I believe there's no way to physiologically necessarily. My blood's been augmented a lot over the years. I volunteered for a lot of stuff and said yes to everything that they could ever give me that would make me better than what I was. I was on a desperate quest for relief. And so I volunteered for all kinds of stuff, and I volunteered for stuff that was transhuman in its nature.
Really?
And it augmented me quickly,
He's actually admitting to going through augmentation and transhumanism, the process of transhumanism, he said. So we're talking about enhancements being added through advanced technologies. These technologies augment or change physical and cognitive abilities, you all. The goal, as they say, is to overcome human limitations. So now he's going to talk about how he went through a period of transformation after he joined a church and then he met his wife. Let's listen.
I was a mess. Let me be clear. She was a mess at the time when I met her too. She was a wreck from all the things I was talking about earlier at the hospital they were forcing her to do, and were just killing her health horribly. And she was sick. And so we got married sick together. It was great. We were a total hot mess. Our first year was a nightmare because I was a screaming nightmare at night. How do you tell that to somebody before we weren't sleeping together before we got married? She didn't know that, She didn't know that I would have these terrors of the night, She didn't know that I was a different person at night. And then all of a sudden into our marriage, my dad comes back in because he wants to control again. He wants to make the money. And I'm a highly monopolized individual to these families. And they wanted that again. And they wanted to turn on the old other side, which is this Nathan and Jason side. And they wanted to make money with that because their business was failing. They're in the bed and breakfast industry now. That's the good cover for all kinds of filthy stuff to happen at a hotel. And they film it and document it and keep it in private drives and create a blacklist on people. But
so that's
the family business.
You're talking about like Epstein type stuff?
Oh yeah.
So I know this, but just for the audience, you're saying Epstein isn't the only Epstein.
That's like late in the game guy.
Yeah.
You know, and I know most people think that's super high level. That's still mid-level in the world of families. He's not the family man in the same way, right? You can run into a different synagogue of Satan everywhere you turn, right? You can run into the great whore of Babylon that sits in Rome and Vatican City all over the place. But then there's these old bloodlines too that are a completely different thing. And they have different ways of controlling people. And information and secrets is what my family trafficked in predominantly. And so my parents on one side, they had a great Christian front in everything they did. But inside, that's where business happened. You know, and it's because they're split personality people. One side is wholly given over to this and the other side is wholly given over to something else. Never even comprehended the idea that I would ever know a family that wasn't this other thing where the powers of control and access were given through the abuse of children. That's what I knew as normal. And I knew that people were corrupt and monsters and were willing to devour each other to rise to the top. I understood what wolves were when they ran the world. And so it was very hard for me to get to a place where I could believe that I could be redeemed because I had witnessed enough of things in the families that make it seem like I am irredeemable forever.
Mm.
And this is the part right here that we really need to understand. Did you hear him say that his family had a great Christian front? They were Christians and yet involved in all sorts of vile behavior, not to mention what they did to him. He was basically passed from male to male during that process of shattering that he mentioned. His family was fully aware of what was happening to him because that was a part of the covenant they made. In the last video, I talked about the cycle of abuse that the Catholic Church is known for. It's because they're all submitting to the same deity.
Like, have I ever encountered somebody who comes from that bloodline? Maybe. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people, but how many times do you come across somebody that does come from that bloodline and acknowledges it, knows it? You know, that's another thing. And so that's why I wanted to ask you that. So you kind of hit on the childhood stuff right there in that kind of description. Was it something that came from complete childhood where it's like from your earliest memories it's just been kind of manipulated and jacked up? And what was that like for you growing up?
Well, my family set up a base of operations. They're from the East Coast, the Reynolds family on one side. My mother's family, just for clarity, I've never exposed a lot of the side of things that were going on with, let me say it another way. The Reynolds family on my father's side, they're all from the East Coast out here, and they're a dynastic family. You know, my great-grandfather, a man named Don Potter Reynolds, was the architect, the head of engineering for the president, as the president of the American Society of Civil Engineering back in the 80s. And he's the one who put the new torch in the Luciferian hand of the Statue of Liberty of Columbia. And so he's a master Mason Luciferian in that way. And he was so much of the shot caller for the family at that time, especially when I came into being. And but my dad left that thing and moved out to the Southwest and started a different empire. And so a lot of how it works in the families is you got two main approaches. If you've got unlimited access to wealth, power, like really, I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about power, like unlimited raw power, where a phone call, the phone book is far more powerful than the bank account because it's who you know can open doors to power anywhere else in the entire world. And that's where everything was. So you can leave with nothing, but then you can go build. And if you need the phone book, there's a price to be paid. And the price to be paid is generally one of your children. This is like the reality. It seems bizarre to some, but a child is generally a chosen child out of the family is given over as an offering to the family. And they're the ones who's going to go through this left-hand path. They're going to experience the desecration of their soul, their identity, and they're going to become an agent for the family that is owned completely. And there's like a legal trustee that is given over to it. There's a board of directors that sits over it. Like, these are real legal confines for how the wealth is distributed out there.
This is the price they have to pay. Yes, it's the price they pay for the power that comes from the kingdom of darkness. Is this how some of these folks who become mega superstars rise to power?
And so, in order to build your empire, you got to be able to go prove yourself. And that's what he ended up doing out in the Southwest. And he moved to Arizona, an area called Flagstaff, Arizona. And where I was born, that is a place that's a high place, Mount Humphreys. It's a volcanic peaks that sit there. And the top of it is where the Hopi Indian and a lot of people had gathered forever to commune with the fallen. They believed that the sons of the sky would come down every season at the winter solstice, and they would abide from the winter solstice to the summer solstice there. And so this was a place where they would give their daughters over to them. This is Hopi mythology, like 101, you know, and they would make these Kachina dolls, which were an effigy of the what I would say is a watcher angel that would come, and the daughter would be given to him, and she would place that over her bed throughout her life, you know, and that's her familiar spirit, right? That's where I was born into. And the people that still practice that old religion, that's the way I refer to it, they still do this. And they still take their children up there to give them over to them on these high days. And so I was born into that, and I was born through that seed line. And but my mother's side are extreme Catholics and Jesuits through and through. And so her father ran a different operation in Southern California, which was much more based on the child exploitation side of the equation. And he operated out of Lake Havasu City, Arizona. Lake Havasu, for those of you that are unfamiliar, sits in the absolute desert border of Arizona and California, and it has the Colorado River that's been dammed up, and they created an artificial lake there. And it was a secret military base back in World War II. It was called Site 6. And it was a stopover point crossing the desert for soldiers going there. And they would made it into a rest and recuperation area. And so it was a party city from its foundation. It had a lot of underground structures that were built into it as a refueling point. And in the 1960s, a guy named Robert P. McCulloch bought it. And he bought it, and he also purchased the London Bridge that crossed the River Thames. And he had it shipped over here stone by stone. And while they were doing that, they excavated 80 bodies that were entombed inside it in a practice that's called annulment, where you would sacrifice a person and bury them alive in the walls of the foundation. And so there's all these chambers in this facility of the London Bridge where they would do torture and all kinds of ritual stuff. But this is why the sing-song nursery rhyme, the London Bridge is falling down, falling down. That's a nursery rhyme to talk about how you have to give your children over to the government so you can hold up the London Bridge. And they would literally take their children. This is in the history book of the museum at Lake Havasu City. You can see these bodies of these children that were sacrificed inside the walls of that space.
Let's dig a little deeper into this one about the London Bridge. This comes from ATL. It says, exploring the allegedly grisly meaning behind London Bridge is falling down. It says the English nursery rhyme London Bridge is falling down seems innocent on the surface, but some scholars believes it's a reference to immurement, and this is what he talked about. He says this is the medieval punishment where a person is locked inside a room until they died. So you're talking about sacrifices here. It says many of us are so familiar with the nursery rhyme London Bridge is falling down that we could sing it in our sleep. We remember playing the London Bridge game in the schoolyard with our friends, chanting the tune and trying not to get caught as the arch fell down. How many of you remember the song and the game? Here you see an image of little girls playing the London Bridge game. This is in 1898. And here are the lyrics. London Bridge is falling down, falling down, falling down. London Bridge is falling down, my fair lady. Off to prison you must go, you must go, you must go. Off to prison you must go, my fair lady. Only problem is you'll never get out of this prison. It goes on to say that, however, the most commonly accepted origin story for the rhyme is that of the London Bridge actually falling down in 1014 because Viking leader Olaf Haraldsson allegedly pulled it down during an invasion of the British Isles. Though the reality of that attack has never been proven, The tale of it inspired a collection of Old Norse poems written in 1230, containing a verse that sounds close to the nursery rhyme. It translates to London Bridge is broken down, gold is won, and bright renown. But that wasn't the only event that could have inspired the London Bridge rhyme. Part of the bridge was damaged in 1281 due to ice damage, and it was weakened by multiple fires in the 1600s, including the Great Fire of London in 1066. Despite all of its structural failures, the London Bridge survived for 600 years and never actually fell down, as the nursery rhyme implies. When it was finally demolished in 1831, it was only because it was more cost-effective to replace it rather than repair it. One dark theory behind the bridge's longevity maintains that there were bodies encased in its moorings. It says the author of the book, The Traditional Games of England, Scotland, and Ireland, Alice Bertha Gomes, suggests that the origin of London Bridge's falling down refers to the use of a medieval punishment known as immurement. Immurement is when a person is encased into a room with no openings or exits and left there to die. Immurement was a form of punishment as well as a form of sacrifice. Noam points to the lyric "Take the key and lock her up" as a nod to this inhumane practice and the belief that the sacrifices may have been children. According to her, people during those times believed that the bridge would collapse if there wasn't a body buried inside. Thankfully, this disturbing suggestion has never been proven, and there is no archaeological evidence that suggests it's true. I don't know, but what do you all think? Continuing, it says, in addition to the mystery behind London Bridge's falling down, there's also the matter of the fair lady. Some believe she may be the Virgin Mary as part of the theory that the rhyme is a reference to a centuries-old Viking attack. Supposedly, the attack happened on September 8th, the date when the Virgin Mary's birthday is traditionally celebrated. Because the Vikings were unable to take the city after they burned the London Bridge, the English claimed the Virgin Mary or Fair Lady protected it. A few royal consorts have also been mentioned as potential fair ladies.
So he bought that as a charged object. He bought that as a portal mechanism, and they built in Lake Havasu City with another designer from the Disneyland, and they literally built a pleasure island. That's what it was facilitated for, and they designed it so that it would be a retirement community that would facilitate the exploitation of children, and that's exclusively what that city was founded and built for. And so the original founders of that operated out of Knights of Columbus predominantly as a wing of the Jesuits, and that's the business down there. It's an industry to cover up child abuse. You got a bunch of old men running around with little boys, and everybody thinks they're grandchildren and nephews and nieces and all that rest. And so all along that area down there is where I would be taken from my earliest days and shattered, abused, traumatized.
You all. So when he talks about shattering, if you listen to the entire video, you'll kind of get an idea for what it is. But it's not just families like this. This is what I was talking about on Sunday with the Roman Catholic Church. They have to, or their pattern is to inflict so much trauma on the child before he or she is 8 years old that it would cause the child to have split personality. It was almost like they would divide themselves or compartmentalize themselves so that one part of them would be this person that's this nice, perfect Christian, and this other part is just a beast, because Nathan, if you listen to most of his message, he will basically tell you that he was trained to be an assassin, and he did. He did. And as a child, he was doing this. But you see it manifest sometimes when you have these crazy mass shootings, or things just happen out of the blue and the person saying, but I didn't do it. I wasn't there. I don't know why they're saying I did. That's what that is, because that part of them that is this monster is acting out the desires of the demon they're possessed with. And that this other part, the nice, sweet little Christian, they don't even remember doing any of it. That's just how deep this thing is. They cannot perceive that they're doing this. But if you dig deeper and you think about the days of slavery and how some of these people are and how they behave, and they're sitting in somebody's church on Sunday, and it's like, but then you're going to the picnic and you're waiting for the body so that you can, taste. It's like, how do you reconcile that? Where did that other person go? So the challenge for us is that, let's see, we need to pray that the Most High will force them to reveal who they truly are, if that makes sense. Because they can put on a show and pretend that they like you, they like, you know what I'm saying, that type of thing. But there's another part of them that will invite you to the family cookout, and then you come up missing. You know what I mean? So I want to play another part of this. I want you to really pay attention to what he's saying, because I'm sharing this not for, people to be frightened about all of this, or, to be totally grossed out, but for us to understand the level that some of these people, sink to, that we are perceiving people to be as we are. I remember Pastor Stephen Darby saying, sometimes we don't understand how evil really is. And so we are fooled by the persona, that Christianese language, and think they're one thing. And then you become friends and you start going places, and then they go on a hunt, and guess who they're hunting? Brother Calvin says, you at the cookout and you on the menu. Yeah, that kind of idea. So listen to this part.
A lot of people are borrowing into. Now, I come from a family that they believe they are descendants of the old gods. That's the best way to say it. That they believe that they are carriers of a seed line that gives them the divine right to rule. And that is what gives them justification spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, scientifically, to dominate the lesser species known as humans. Humans literally means a lesser species of man. And they do not believe they are a human in the same way. They believe they are something other than. And that's descendants of this hierarchical ruling species that is from the celestial realm, that descended in the days of Jared and came down and procreated with the daughters of men, and that they still trace their seed line back to Gilgamesh, till Nimrod. And so this is what the dynastic families believe they have, is a superiority in their genetics on one side and the ability to commune with the divine. And so their children are progenitors of these, some might call them abreactions, mutations, these skills, psychic abilities, that kind of stuff, all variants of it. And so they raise up their children in this path with which involves a tremendous amount of shattering of the soul and the identity, so that there's compartmentalization within, and it allows them the ability to train their child up in a way that makes them conducive towards the family. I call them the family. That's what I called them. It's a better word for mafia than anything else. But no, we didn't call ourselves, like my family wouldn't ever call themselves Illuminists.
Yeah.
Right? They're Luciferian, That's for certain. They worship Hillel ben Shahar, as he's really known, but different reasons than what people are ascribed to, you know.
So I wanted you to hear that part again, because he's saying these families, these bloodline families that Loren was talking about, they know that they are a mutation. I hope you caught that part. A mutation. And in as you listen to the rest of what he's saying, you know, his family were the church going family. But then he said on his mother's side, they were Jesuits. So you see a duality here where the image that's being presented to everyone is this pure, perfect family. But then when you look behind the curtain, you see a family of assassins. He said they own, their family owned a bed and breakfast. The business, he told you why they had the business. They wanted people to come and they would record everything that was going on in that bed and breakfast. And if it was somebody they could blackmail, they would have that tape and they would go back and blackmail those people. This is what he was talking about with Epstein. It's like there's a reason why they're doing what they're doing, and they make their money by doing these wicked things. It's a part of the process, per se. So this shattering of the soul idea, I mean, it runs deep. I mean, they really they they do some heinous things, just some unbelievable things to those children, because he said the goal is to make the child become submissive to the demon spirit that will inhabit their body. So they have to shatter their soul. I'm just like, it's unbelievable when you hear it. But this is the level of depravity that most of our people know nothing about, because churches didn't teach this stuff. So this next video, it's going to be a bit different, because this young lady, as I said, she was raised in a conservative Mormon family, a family that you would think would be, you know, the perfect family. But then she's going to share some things, and I want you to see how some of the things she's talking about compares to what Nathan is saying. So the title of this video is Born into a Hate Group. So let's listen to her story.
Hi guys, my name is Jenny, and I spent my entire life in Christian nationalism, white supremacy, anything that you can imagine about alt-right Mormon communities that are prepping and fighting against the evils of the world. I was a trad wife for 24 years, and I just left all of this behind. I left the Mormon Church in 2018, and I left MAGA just about 2 years ago. And today I want to dive into all of the many questions that I'm getting around white supremacy, what that looked like from the inside out, my rationalization and justification for it. And I do want to give a little warning at the beginning of this video that I think that some of the things I'm going to talk about are going to be really hard to hear. And I want you to know that they are just as hard for me to talk about as they will be for you to listen to. So let's just dive right in.
My family, my children, my children's children.
Its founder says he is building a fortress for the white race.
It's a racial association. I kind of want to ask you, after seeing this, do you think what we're doing is immoral?
I have a ton of people sending me this video this week and asking me what I think about it. And I love that this video exists, because I want you to imagine now 200 years down the line that this all-white community has, built in isolation there in the middle of the Ozarks. or the Appalachians, wherever they are in Arkansas. And now their descendants 200 years from now, what are they going to look like? That's me. The Mormons did that 200 years ago. They left civilization. They took their little white European, Scandinavian, British, English, German selves out to Salt Lake City, and they taught their whites only stuff for 200 years. And I'm the result of that. My kids are 7th generation. I was 5th generation. And we are the result of the OG white supremacist cult in America, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And people have asked, would you have moved to a community like that 7 years ago? I did. That was my life. I picked the whitest country club neighborhood, and that's where I lived. All of my friends were white. All of my friends were Mormon. And then when I left the Mormon church, all of my friends were still white, and they were all Christian. I just started talking about white supremacy on my YouTube channel here a couple of weeks ago. And I think that most people are picturing those neo-Nazi groups. They're picturing the skinheads. They're picturing the Klan. They're picturing all of that stuff. But what they don't realize is that there are white supremacists here in America today, and a lot of them, so many of them, that are packaged in Jesus and packaged in church, and they wear little crosses and they look really sweet, and they're absolutely not.
Let's pause right there. She said most of these folks are packaged in Jesus and pretend to be nice and sweet, but they're absolutely not. I'm sure we know that to be true. Let's remember that members of the KKK are Christians. Reports say that Dylan Roof was a devout Christian. This article from Baptist News Global says, "Saving Our Churches from Dylan Roof's White Jesus." It goes on to say Roof's own journal, written in prison while he was awaiting trial and subsequently entered into evidence by the prosecution, shows how tightly woven together Christianity and white supremacy were in his worldview. There he called on whites to reform American Christianity, to transform it from being this weak, cowardly religion to become a warrior's religion. So being a Christian is just a label for white supremacists. Now let's go back to the video.
Okay, so here's what I believed about race. You have to go way back to the past life, which Mormons call the pre-existence. If you just Google Mormon pre-existence, and you can read all about that. I believed that I was literally birthed by one of the heavenly mothers and heavenly father, Elohim God, and that we lived in a life before we gained earth bodies where we could make choices and we had our personalities and our passions. Like the person that I am today, that's who I was in this past life. And all of God's spirit children were being born into this past life until he had amassed, billions and billions of people. And at that point, God, who was white, the heavenly mothers who were white, they called together all of us spirit children in what's called the council in heaven. And in this council in heaven, God told us that he wanted us to become a God like himself. And in order to do so, we'd have to come to earth, gain physical bodies. And if we passed the test, that we could come back to him and be gods and goddesses just like him and his heavenly wives. So God presents this plan for us to become like him. And his two sons volunteered to play a really pivotal role of savior. God wanted us to have free choice, and to do so, he'd have to have a sacrifice in the form of one of his children giving up their lives and also being that exemplar for everybody. So Jesus came forward, and Lucifer, who would later become Satan, and they had opposing views. All of us spirit children chose sides. 2/3 of us went with Jesus, and 1/3 of God's children went with Satan. Well, they lost the war, so they were cast out. They never receive bodies. They can never become gods. And they are now these satanic forces that rule over the world, led by Satan. But of those 2/3, there were part of them that were kind of apathetic, kind of fence sitters was a word that one of the Mormon prophets used to describe them. And another phrase that the Mormon prophets used to describe these people who, like, they got to stay in heaven, they got to come down to earth, and they hadn't quite followed Satan, but they weren't the best spirit children of God. The phrase that the Mormon prophets used for them is less valiant. They were less valiant in their past life, And so what happened to those people, according to what my church taught me, was they were cursed to be born to African families. And here's why being born to African families was such a curse. Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, Cain kills Abel. Cain is cursed with black skin. He's then removed from the Garden of Eden, which was in America, in Jackson County, Missouri. Adam on Diamond is the biblical Adamic language word that I was taught as a child. And so Cain was cast out to Africa, given black skin. All of his descendants were those less valiant spirits. So not only were they physically cursed, but they just weren't the best spirits to begin with. Now, if you're listening to this and thinking this is crazy, it absolutely is. And I don't know how very many adults who hear this convert to the Mormon church. I think it's really a tricky thing to sell these days. But again, that childhood indoctrination, I was born and raised into a community that taught this. And I've said in other videos that just as I was learning how to walk and talk and like zip up my own coat in the kindergarten coat closet, I was being taught, you lived in heaven, Heavenly Father, the war in heaven, they're cursed, they're sent down, black people, they come from Africa, they were bad spirits, and then Cain was bad here on earth. So those are not good people, nor are the indigenous people of the United States, because the Book of Mormon, there was a good brother, there were two bad brothers. The bad brothers were cursed with brown skin. That's why the Indians have brown skin, because these are cursed people. And it would have been as difficult for me to unlearn that concept as it would have been to forget how to zip my coat in the kindergarten closet. Every cell in my body had accepted it as truth because I was taught it in scriptures, and scriptures don't lie. That's the truth. That's the most true thing in the world. Our prophets, our charismatic leaders with their big, bright smiles stood at the pulpits in our local congregations and sometimes speaking the whole world, talking about these truths. My parents, my family, my home reinforced it. The artwork, books that we had, music that was written just for children reinforced this. The whole community at large reinforced this truth. For me to think anything otherwise would have been like learning to walk sideways instead of forward. No, my knees bend. I'm supposed to go forward. I can't walk sideways. Black people are cursed. Native Americans are cursed. And this right here is why I think that it's more dangerous than joining like a neo-Nazi group, because I never had critical thinking to begin with. I didn't come from just a normal life. My whole life was this. So, man, that battle of good and evil. I know I've mentioned in other videos that I did vote for Barack Obama privately. Nobody ever knew that I had done that. And I was a huge Obama fan. I had to pretend like I wasn't on the outside. He was so inspiring. He had me from the Democratic National Convention. I was this alt-right, Mormon, Christian nationalist, white supremacist, and I voted for Barack Obama. But I justified that because he was half white. So I think that's about my limit for explaining white supremacy this morning. So let me segue into my journey out and a couple of really key moments for me. I left the Mormon church in 2018 and all of that collapsed, but I went back right into Christianity and still holding on to the white supremacy, the Christian nationalism, just believing that the Mormon church had been incorrect. I spent 4.5 years in Christianity and still hardcore MAGA. But then I was making lots of new friends, Mexican friends, African-American friends, all kinds of people that just weren't white, and starting to see the world in a very different perspective. And I know that a lot of people have asked me what it was that catapulted me out of white supremacy. Well, first of all, having deconstructed the Book of Mormon and working with cult deprogrammers and deconstruction experts and therapists and just reading books and employing critical thinking for the first time, I then deconstructed the Bible and realized that I no longer see evidence for it or a God. And letting go of that and the Garden of Eden and all of the mythology and a vengeful God who wants to curse people, that opened up this space for change. So it was my religious deconstruction that led me to begin to deconstruct racism and white supremacy. But it was kind of an accidental little funny thing that happened one day that led to just catapulting me completely out of it. I was just scrolling through Facebook and I came across a professor, and I don't even remember if she was Johns Hopkins or Duke University or where she was, But I found this professor, and she was talking about genetics and some genetic research, and she was talking about the gene for blonde hair, blue eyes, and white skin, and how recent that was. I don't even know where to find her now, but it was this whole lecture series on the Fertile Crescent, humans migrating out of the Fertile Crescent and spreading around the world, and then little things like red hair and blonde hair and white skin as we migrated further north. And I had this moment of shock realizing, oh, we didn't start as white children of a white God in the Garden of Eden. Humans actually started in this specific place, and we were always brown. And what I am is a brand new mutation. In that moment, at age 48 years old, I realized that everything that I had been taught my whole entire life was a lie. And I had to learn to walk sideways, and here I am. Thanks for watching. Please be kind in the comments.
It's quite a lot. But she came to the same conclusion that Nathan came to, that they were a mutation. Now, the covers are really being pulled back, family, because you can imagine, if you can imagine, being taught all your life that you're the pure race, you're the perfect race, you're superior to everybody else because of your white skin. And then you're smacked in the face with the truth. So the hidden secrets are being revealed. But most importantly, they are discovering some things, and it's forcing them to examine the lies about their history. It has to be a rude awakening. And as I said, there's a duality here of the Christian religion. It's intertwined with white supremacy and devil worship in various ways, often by promoting white nationalism. For Europeans, the religion of Christianity is their identity. Europe was the center of Christianity. Our people didn't practice that. So they needed us to believe everything they taught us about ourselves, but they wrapped it in religion. But Christianity played a key role in the growth and the expansion of modern European culture and identity. So you have to know it's not a coincidence that they are waking up to the truth about themselves as we are waking up. We're waking up. Some of them are waking up. But here's the thing. The powers that shouldn't be know that some of them are waking up, and they need them to go back to sleep. That's what Donald Trump is trying to do. So American Christian nationalism is really about racial solidarity among white Americans. What we see happening is a push to protect and enforce policies that benefit predominantly white Americans. The Mormons that she's talking about, they segregated themselves and they projected an ideology of purity. But what was at the root? That's the question right there. What was at the root? Freemasonry and white supremacy. So we see the ruling elite promoting purity on one hand, because that's the way, well, I should say they promote that on one hand. But on the other hand, you have these families that Nathan was born into, like the assassins, because the ruling elite need them to maintain control. They need the families like Nathan's family to, let's say it how they used to say it, keep us in our place. So now let's dig a little deeper into Mormonism. So we're going to look at some things that some people may not know about that religion. They may not know that it has occultic roots. So, this journal article from Institute for Religious Research is entitled Occultic and Masonic Influence in Early Mormonism. It says the evidence of Joseph Smith's close connection to occultism and Freemasonry and how this influenced the origin and development of the Latter-day Saints Church is not well known outside of scholar circles. I wonder why. I wonder why a lot of people don't know about this. It's because they keep things like this hidden. It says both Joseph Smith and his father were involved in the occult practice known as money digging. Have you all heard about that? I had never heard of this. Money digging. This involved special rituals and ceremonies which were performed for the purpose of obtaining buried treasure thought to be guarded by evil spirits. Just pause and think. Just pause and think on that. Let's go on. So it goes on to say that Joseph Smith Jr.'s role in the quest for treasure was especially important since he had a seer stone. A seer stone. Joseph would place this small special rock in his hat, then pull the hat up to his face to block out all light. By doing this, he claimed he could see supernaturally and would help those who were digging by locating the place where the treasure was buried and observing the spirits that were guarding it. Joseph Jr. himself admitted to being a money digger, though he said it was never very profitable for him. He and his father's money digging continued until at least 1826. On March 20th of that year, Joseph was arrested, brought before a judge, and charged with being a glass looker and a disorderly person. Think about a glass looker. Now think about a crystal ball. It goes on to say the laws at that time had what was known as the Vagrant Act. It defined a disorderly person as one who pretended to have skill in areas of palmistry, telling fortunes, or discovering where lost goods might be found. According to court records, justice nearly determined that Joseph was guilty, though no penalty was administered, quite possibly because this was a first offense. You you all, let's just call it what it is. He was involved in divination. Let's look at this article from Dialogue. He was involved in divination, family. It says Joseph Smith grew up in a time and place where folk magic was an accepted part of the landscape. Before he was a prophet, he was a diviner, or more specifically, a scryer who used his peepstone to discover the location of buried treasure. While most members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in the 21st century know nothing of Joseph's magical practices, there is ample evidence to support the claim that they occurred. You all, I mean, some of this stuff, it's like you just have to shake your head. Now let's go back. So it says shortly after Joseph Smith stopped digging money, he kept the seer stone, the stone that he was using. It says it was with the seer stone that he claimed to both find the plates and later produce the Book of Mormon. So where did he get it from, you all? Where did it come from? It says this was known by early converts, but has since been replaced with later accounts of an angelic visitor. So listen to what Michael Quinn wrote, this historian. During this period from 1827 to 1830, Joseph Smith abandoned the company of his former money-digging associates, but continued to use for religious purposes the brown seer stone he had previously employed in the treasure quest. His most intensive and productive use of the seer stone was in the translation of the Book of Mormon. I'll drop down. It says, thus we see that historians have documented a continuity between Joseph's early occultic practices and the origins of Mormonism. This link extends to the development of the Latter-day Saints temple ceremony. You can't make this stuff up. You cannot make this up. So it says many of those involved with him were Masons, such as his brother and others they have listed here. It says Joseph Smith admitted to being a Mason in his History of the Church, Volume 4, page 551. So this is what he wrote. In the evening, I received the first degree in Freemasonry in the Nauvoo Lodge, assembled in my general business office. The record for the next day reads, I was with the Masonic Lodge and rose to the sublime degree. So how did Joseph's Masonic membership affect the development of the Mormon Church? Well, it says the most significant area appears to be in the development of the Mormon temple ceremonies. The ceremonies. So let's keep going. Let's look at this. It says Joseph Smith was indeed a Freemason. This is from a Freemasonry site now. But the complexity surrounding this topic continues to ignite the debate or ignite debate. It says the relationship between Joseph Smith and Freemasonry started early in his life. In fact, his older brother Hiram and possibly his father were Freemasons while the family lived near Palmyra, New York. It says both Mormonism and Freemasonry share certain elements in rituals, symbols, and moral teachings. Both of them have the rituals and symbols involved in their practices. For example, the square and compass is a symbol in Freemasonry, and it can be seen in some historical Mormon temple architecture. So here it talks about some of the significant figures who were also Freemasons along with him, along with Joseph Smith. And it also names Brigham Young. Most of you are familiar with him. Brigham Young, John Taylor, Wilford Woodruff, and Lorenzo Snow. So listen to some quotes from discourses of Brigham Young. This is what he had to say about blacks. The seed of Ham, which is the seed of Cain, descending through Ham, will, according to the curse put upon him, serve his brethren, and be a servant of servants to his fellow creatures, until God removes the curse, and no power can hinder it. You all, please tell me, how is it possible for the seed of Ham to be the seed of Cain? The seed of Ham is the seed of Cain? Please explain that. But do you see how these so-called religious leaders just told these blatant lies and basically got away with it? They got away with it. This is what he says about the Indians or the Native Americans. They called them the Lamanites. It says there is a curse on these aborigines of our country who roam the plains and are so wild that you cannot tame them. They are of the house of Israel. They once had the gospel delivered to them. They had the oracles of truth. Jesus came and administered to them after his resurrection, and they received and delighted in the gospel until the fourth generation, when they turned away and became so wicked that God cursed them with this dark and benighted and loathsome condition, which is the dark, melanated skin. And this supports what Jenny said in her video. This is what she was taught. So that's why they need to be segregated. They need to be in their own private schools so that they can continue to teach these lies to their children. They don't want people in their environment who can say, no, this is a lie, or look at this is what this says. So she says she later found out, oh, you mean we weren't the children of the gods and we're really a mutation? Yeah, that would have to be very shocking. So what do we see happening here, family? We see Jeremiah 16:19 being fulfilled right before our eyes. And they are saying, surely our fathers have inherited lies. Our fathers have inherited lies. And now they're dealing with the fallout. But again, this administration is trying to put a lid on it. They know they have to contain it somehow. So that's what you see happening with the predictive programming. We need you to think that, oh, these melanated people only got these jobs because it was preferential treatment. It wasn't because they were qualified. No, we were feeling sorry for them. And it's time to put an end to that because we only need the most qualified people in these positions. This is what he's doing. So he's making a public show of firing these high profile melanated people. What do you think this is all about? It's feeding into the same ridiculous, stupid ideology that they had, that they are supreme. And that's why he said the other day, go woke, go broke. Did you all hear him say that? Go woke, go broke is what he said. So the intersection of Christianity and white supremacy, it's complex. And we see from a historical standpoint that they have merged it. It's blended into their religion, the religion of Christianity. As I said previously, to be a Christian in those days meant that you were a white European. That's what it meant. For those who are still trying to say, oh, well, that's exactly what it meant. It meant that you were white and you were European. That's what forced them to come together, because before that, they were killing each other off. You see a lot of that beginning to happen again today. But yeah, family, these confessions that are being made by their ancestors, particularly the information that Nathan shares, and how they're, inducting these people into these bloodline families. In one, he says they get their bloodline taken. I think he called it a heraldry. They have to go to someone who has a record of all of the families in these bloodlines. And they can tell you what their inheritance should be based on that bloodline. And he says they can trace it back to Nimrod. Just think about that. So while they were totally trying to erase ours, they can trace theirs back to the fallen. Imagine that. Imagine that. Okay, I know I covered a lot, so let's see what some of you all are saying. I already know I'm not going to get to all these comments. If you have not hit the like and you're just joining us, please do that for us. We greatly appreciate it. So I'm going to scroll back up and see what some of you are saying. I know it's like Isa says they know by Herodotus and their own history. They descend from the Scythians and they descend from the serpent, the dragon. That was something that Nathan admitted. He says his family knew that that's who they were worshiping, but to get the power, they were willing to do it. And also that some of them still have some special abilities that are carryovers, some things that are specific to that Nephilim bloodline. So, yeah, interesting. Very, very interesting. That's all I can say. Carla says melanin is Yah made, the blessing. Absolutely. Absolutely. Micah says these were back in the days MAGA supporters. Mm-hmm. Mm-mm-mm. Shaya, why do those warming people come to black houses, then handed out those little pamphlets? Are you talking about the Mormons? Trying to figure that one out. Let's see. Team Truth. So I guess their God doesn't care much about the heart of an individual, just skin color. And for them, it's white skin. It was the white skin. So it's interesting, though, that you see some of the same foundations, like with Nathan being brought up in the Luciferian religion, Jenny in Mormonism, and then look at what's happening in the Catholic religion. What's at the root? The rituals, the sacrifices, perversion. And you see that the Freemasons will have a hand in it all. All right. Council's girl. So crazy how they were taught all these lies but never cross-checked it with the Bible. Well, they have their own version of the Bible because remember the Mormons supposedly received this new book. So they're going to believe what's in that book. Chosen daughter of Zion says these people are delusional. They're beyond delusional. Niguana, hope I said that right. The audacity of the Mayo Saxons. Oh, I think you're right with a lot of them, Diana. They still believe this lie, and that's why they won't repent. They still believe what was taught to them because for some of them, they can't let go of that ideology. They cannot accept the fact that this is who we really are. But we were told that we were this. So it's like, okay, even though we can see what the truth is, we're not going to accept that. We're not going to believe that. Sam says, Sam's testimony, wow, so their teaching is actually the reverse. It absolutely is. Almost all of it. It's the opposite of what they're saying. A lamp of oil says she's never read the Bible. A lot of them don't. A lot of Catholics don't read the Bible. They wait for the priest to tell them what the Bible says. So, yeah, when you don't, but she did say she started reading it and she could see that, oh, this isn't true. So, yeah, they just listen to what those who are in front of them will say. Sherry says that stone would be the Sherry Stone. That will be a Kodak moment. Let's see. Byron says, what trips me out is that some of our people will follow those people in their area. I could never figure out how some of our people would go and join a Mormon church. I couldn't figure that one out. I really couldn't. I don't know, but yeah. I mean, their books specifically said. I mean, it was the same with Christianity. If you think about it, the same thing, but most of our people were forced into that one. So, Lily Michelle says, our people are terrified to even listen to the truths we're sharing. Thus, the reason for their continuance in that erroneous belief system of Christianity. Yeah, they'd rather attack us and tell us, we're racist. Now, had I said everything that she said, oh, you're a racist. Yeah, go figure. Go figure. Wow. Let's see. Hebrew in you says religion is the greatest weapon, second to fear. Oh boy, that's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah, Ivan, a lot of us have to do that. That the Most High will continue to wake them up to the truth. I believe that a lot of the turmoil that's beginning and that will come is going to force a lot of them to open their eyes to the truth, particularly when they start seeing these split personality people. And because for right now, they can't see that a lot of the people pushing for just snatching people off the streets where their families don't even know where they are. They don't even know if those people have children to go back to, are Christians. The biggest promoters of the genocide are Christians. So let that sink in. So for those who are thinking, oh, in the end times when things get rough, it's going to be the Christians coming to our rescue. Okay. Okay. We'll see. We will see. Carla said she had to deconstruct. Yes, she did. Very much so. But again, she was raised in that. That's why they get them at that age. They teach it to them when they are young. From a young age, that's all they know. She said everything in her environment was reinforcing that same message. Let's see. Lamp of oil. So oil says, so now she knows. She knows, I guess. It's going to pull a few more here, and then we're going to wrap it up. But again, thank you all for joining me. Sister Alma said, wow, she has done some serious deconstruction. Yeah. The truth has to come out, though. The truth has to come out. Let's see. A nap notorious Hebrew. Oh no, we'll see. Something's certainly going on with him. Yep, that's exactly what they did, Alana. A lot of it, they basically whited him out. That's why, again, they say they are modern Europeans. Modern. So you can't forget that part. Add the modern on there so that we know who we're talking about. Mm. To Jay says, by the rivers of Babylon, where we sat down, and there we wept when we remembered Zion, for the wicked carried us away in captivity, and then required from us a song. I know that's right. I know that's right. Hebrew girl, it is mind-boggling. It really is. But we have to know this stuff. We can't keep our heads in the sand and not understand where some of these people are coming from. You have to be able to understand this mindset, and particularly this mindset of split personality. You go to the cookout and, like Brother Calvin said, you're on the menu because you thought we were friends. Remember that story that happened, and maybe it was 3 years ago, with the little boy who went to the pond with his friends, and they were trying to take him under, throwing rocks at him, and he's like, I thought they were my friends. That mindset, how do you explain that? How do you explain the mindset of a Dylan Roof? You're going to sit there in the service, participate, knowing what you're really there for. How do you explain that mindset? I mean, con money. If their mouth is moving, then they are lying. We definitely know that about this administration. We definitely know that. Let's see. Nope, they cannot stop the truth, Lisa. It's out there now. So again, I will leave the links for those in the description. Sister Cece sent the one for Nathan, and I believe there was a part 2 to that, but I mean, some of that stuff is like, oh, this is just too much to take in, you know. It's like, just let me get it and get what I think will be relevant for us. But some of that stuff is like, oh, this is a bit much. I don't want all of that down in my spirit. Oh my goodness. Let's see. Tony, that's a very good question. If Ham was cursed, why are they all trying to be Ham, Nimrod, son of Canaan, if the curse was blackness? Yeah, they say they're Egyptians. They want to identify with Nimrod. I mean, well, then who are you talking about then? If you're saying he was cursed with black skin. Yeah, they have to create all kinds of lies to justify their actions. You all, if you wouldn't mind, hit the like for us. We're going to be wrapping up soon. Just a few more. Vicky says that's why every demonic movie has a priest or Catholic church. That's interesting. I don't really watch those movies, but yeah. Let's see what else we have. Okay. Bernadette says the Catholic Church never encourages Bible reading. They just teach you to go to church and pray and pay your tithes. Oh, my goodness. Sister Vita says this is excellent teaching that actually helps us in these last days. We need to know what we are up against and the level of evil that is truly out there. We need to truly have our heart on Yah. Absolutely. Absolutely. We need to be discerning and wise. I'm just telling you, because you don't know if you're dealing with one with a split personality, unless you've been around that person for a long time. You've had the opportunity to see some fruit, but Yeah, you need to pray for discernment. Abba, force them to show and reveal who they really are. Force them to reveal what is behind the curtain. Okay. All right, so we're going to wrap it up there. There are so many more comments that I could get to, but we're going to continue the discussion because I believe we are in the times where some strange things are happening and we need to be prepared for it. You all already know that they want to reveal their ascended masters, and present them as the gods that created, everything. Let's just say created them. I'm not going to say created me. But that's everything's pointing to that, to their big reveal, to say that these are the ones that created everything, and they're going to show us what we need to do now. We need to follow what they're teaching us. It's coming. I mean, if you're reading the book of Revelation, you already know that these things are leading to the fulfillment of that prophecy. So we have to be prayed up. We need to watch as well as pray. So thanks for joining me, family. You all have a blessed week. Thank you to all of our moderators. I appreciate all that you do. Many blessings to you. So peace and blessings, family. Join me next time.